Meg Donahue went from barely being able to get out of bed to thriving pain-free. And she didn't do it using a lot of medication. In fact, her transformation is so that she could get off of all of that medication to treat that crippling pain. And I'm excited to share that story with you today here on this Exam Room Flashback.
I was my whole life an athlete. And played everything, played it in college. And then as I got older, things started to show up, and they manifested as a type of arthritis in my hips and my joints. And so I found that just kind of getting out of bed became an event. So I'd had to swing my legs out, and it would take me 10, 15, 20 minutes just to get cranked, straight. And I just thought this was the progression and the repercussions of living a kind of, active, slightly crazy life. And what happened, and this was not at all my intent when we started our company, it was for my mom's health that I was primarily concerned. But what happened, because I began eating a whole food plant-based diet, the pain started to just go away. And it was more than pain. It was also that kind of chronic fatigue. I was forever having those kind of not quite pinned downable type of disease, autoimmune diseases that, it could be this, it could be chronic fatigue, it could be that, it could be Epstein-Barr. And so I just had a host of things like that, plus pain. And I just always thought that was how it was going to be. And shortly into my time of eating whole food plant-based, and I mean within a month, I started to notice, oh my goodness, I'm feeling better. And it struck me one day I just got up from the couch, and that sounds really simple, but I did it without any hesitation or pain or wincing. And something very dramatic is happening here.
Indeed, it was. And while this transformation was happening rapidly, it was the decades of unhealthy eating and alcohol and self-loathing that had brought Meg to rock bottom. And it was here that she was forced to have a difficult conversation with herself. She knew that she couldn't keep going this way because right now, her life had come to a crash.
And I was out of options. And that was when it wasn't like I came to a resolution. I was just I was out of options. And so being out of options is they call it now surrender. But then it was just, I had no choice in my mind. It's I didn't know what else to do. So I had a big surrender, and I said, I just got to give this stuff up. The obvious things. And I had no idea how to do that. I had no idea how to live my life in a kind of normal way that wasn't struggle. But I did know one thing. I knew that at some point in my life, and it had probably been when I was a very small child, I knew some basic things. I knew when I was hungry, I knew when I was tired, I knew when I was full, and I knew when I was happy, and I knew when I was sad. So those are the kind of the basic things I understood within me were there. And I just had no idea how to go find them again or let them come out. And so that's where the beginning of my shift in how I perceive myself in the world, and how I went from, I say I had to overcome a lot of advantages to get where I was, so but what happened, and then how I went from there to really looking at my life totally differently from a health perspective. And that certainly with food transformed my relationship to it in many ways, where I just surrendered. I stopped trying to control it and fix it, and said, there's got to be a better way. And so fast forward to a point where I was an adult, and the issues that my body had started to break down in ways that I hadn't anticipated. I really hadn't felt at the age that I was at the time to feel as bad as I did. And you had mentioned it earlier, I had the beginnings of macular degeneration and just all of these kind of weird autoimmune things. And that's when Whole Foods dropped on my lap, and out of my mom, who was in hospice care and very sick. And I just started researching who survived it. And so I came at it from that point of view. Mm-hmm. I had been eating a relatively, what I thought was a decent diet. But then when I went and I started eating this way, everything changed.
Well, yeah, and we're going to talk about that more in depth about that transformation in a little bit. But I do have kind of a two-parter for you right now, and I want to go back to what you were talking about, those issues with food that you had beginning in your teens and early
Sure.
20s. Specifically, what were those issues, and what do you think brought them on? Was it body image issues? Was it pressure that you would put upon yourself? What do you think brought them on?
I think that's the $1,000,000 question. And I don't think it was one thing. I think, and I hesitate to say that there's a profile like a type A personality or you know, a looking for control. I think those things all contribute to it. I think that, ability to handle situations and like those types of emotional skills, I think are a part of it. I think though, Chuck, a big part was that I actually had some food sensitivities I didn't know about. And the more research that, we're finding out about people who get caught up in eating disorders. And for me, it was a type of controlling of food and some bulimia. And how that came about was just a very, kind of, you hear about it from friends. And this was the 80s. So it wasn't really mainstream. There wasn't really a lot of information at all. It was really kind of clouded in shame, which makes it very hard to find your way out of, because shame is a pretty powerful muffler.
Yeah, yeah,
You just
yeah,
like, okay, I'll just stay here.
yeah.
And so I think that compounds it. That compounds being, like if you're sick, if you have a sore throat, you don't have a pile of shame on you about going and getting help. But with types of things that have to do with addiction or whether it be food or drug or alcohol, there's a layer sometimes of shame that really stops people from getting assistance with it. And so I think that was definitely true for me and many of my peers at the time. But I just was tenacious in that there's something in me that said, this is not how things are supposed to be.
Mm.
I haven't always been like this. What is going on? And so I think that was the driver for me to get some sort of help. And it wasn't like, a straight line. It wasn't like, oh yeah, and then I went and everything turned out great. It was, just going a little this way, then taking a left and a right and a left and a right, but staying the course, of, I know that how I want to be in my life is somebody who, I get up in the morning, I eat what I eat, I wear what I wear, and none of it is in conflict or in relationship to, I'm not feeling like, am I on diet or off diet? I can't do that. I can't live my life like that.
Yeah.
I just can't do it. I need to be free. And that was my goal. And so every decision, I think, was guided by that principle, including to surrender that I had no idea how to do it.
Let's talk specifically about what it was that you were eating during your time when you were in college, and you were playing sports. You were very athletic, and I can't imagine that having bulimia at that point was an advantage to you on the field whatsoever. I would imagine, if anything, that would have hindered your performance. But what were some of the foods that you were eating during that time, and which ones do you think that you may have had sensitivities to in hindsight?
Yeah, and probably not surprising, the like high sugar carbs, which many that whole combination of sugar, fat, and sweet, the salt, that whole combination that is so appealing in so many foods now, that was definitely something that was like a trigger of sorts. And so, and I look back now and I think, I wish I could say to this young, because I was a young college student. I was 18, so brave to keep on going, and so much courage and so much willpower to do all the things that I did. And with all this going on, it took so much energy. And there are so many people like that who just are under the mistaken belief that they don't have the strength or the willpower. But when you pull back and you look, and it's like, oh my God, if you can go 1, 2, 3 days, weeks, and even years going through what you've gone through and still, go to college and accomplish things, you have amazing willpower. Imagine when this is no longer an issue.
Yeah.
So, and that's what happened for me is I it was definitely the high fat foods. And, there's plenty of that in college. Almost all of it was, cafeteria type food. And there's this just a smorgasbord, and then you're out late and you're drinking beer. So it all just kind of like, and beer has, alcohol has so much sugar. And so all of it just snowballed. And so something was happening to me physically that I didn't put in the equation. I did not put in the equation that a part of it was what was physically going into my body was skewing the rest of my life. I don't know how, but so many people do. It's like, I don't know how I missed it. I got that, okay, if you put alcohol in your body, then you're not going to feel good, but you can't not eat food. So I didn't have a guiding principle for that. And so that was really a part of me just being what makes you feel good, what makes you feel bad, and being aware of those things. And so that's how the relationship with food changed. Very much so, when you can give up alcohol or drugs, you learn some strategies to do so that work for, just about anything. And so they were pretty much the same principles.
But the journey to health is not always a linear one. There are twists and there are turns, and there is definitely a learning curve here. And so back when Meg was still in her 30s, the aches and the pains, they were really piling up. She hadn't yet discovered the benefits of a plant-based diet. But what she did have was what she thought was a healthy diet at the time, filled with lean proteins, chicken and fish. And of course, there were also the indulgences, the French fries, the milkshakes, the trips to the drive-thru.
And somehow they didn't get put into what I was actually eating. When I would think about it in my mind, I would think, oh, I eat, chicken, fish, salad, some veggies, and once in a while pie. But I didn't put all of the other stuff in the diet. I don't know if other people do that, but that was me. I would just like kind of cherry pick what was good.
I mean, that's something we've all done with our diet, right? You take the good, you forget the bad, you put them together, and there you have the facts of life, right? And so for Meg, the fact is she was overlooking all of these inflammatory foods that were taking a heavy toll on her health. Her pain had intensified at this point to the point where she was basically living off of ibuprofen. And I remember being gobsmacked when I asked her just how many pills she was popping.
At least, 4 at a time, 2 and 3 times a day, and that's just like nuts. You think about it. I don't know how, it was crazy.
But I bet it was normal for you at the time too, wasn't it?
Vitamin I, it's like what I did in the morning. And then lunch, and I went to bed. It was just like didn't even register, but that's a culture that we're in, so it's very hard to see until you've seen. And so that's why I just try as much as I can to spread this message and to let people know there is such hope and help. And it's so much easier than the life that I was living.
And this is pain that Meg had been living with for nearly a half century. It was right around 50 years old that she began to eat this plant-based diet. She shifted in this direction, and then suddenly the need for 4 ibuprofen at a time, all of this crippling pain, all of that, it was gone. But Meg's story is really the tale of 2 stories. You see, she wouldn't be on this path if not for her own mom, who was in very grave condition, her heart functioning at just 10%.
She was hospice care and brought her home, and she went from that, and then over a year's time, gradual, incrementally getting better. We fed her a whole food plant-based diet, very small meals, and now she drives. She got her headlights changed on her own car the other day. So, she's like very capable. She swims. Before COVID, she was swimming 4 times a week. She still lives here. We have a little renovated apartment here for her. And it's great. My kids get to spend time with her. The other thing that happens, Chuck, and I think this is important to talk to as well. Dr. Dean Ornish talks about the 4 pillars of health. And this is something that I like to put equal credence on all of them. The food is very important. You got to get that part handled and figure out, your eating piece. But also, and then we talked a little bit about meditation and surrender to calm that inner voice inside of you, or at least be able to distinguish that it's not you, and give something so you can deal with your stress and maybe anxiety, because who doesn't have, some part of that in this world. But also love and support, exercise, a little bit of exercise. Don't have to be a triathlete. Go for a walk. Like, I love your story of walking, or whatever brings you joy for exercise. And then to have this last pillar, which is love and support. And, and I know in talking with you and seeing the work you do, so much of what feeds you is to give away what was given to you, right? And you got to give it away to keep it. And it's that circle that, our company, that's what I thrive on. I love giving people a message that there's hope and giving them a practical way to get there, so that they can live their life in a way that is, joyous and free.
Meg and I recorded an entirely separate conversation just about her mom's remarkable transformation in another interview. And if you would like to check that out, there is a link to that in the episode notes. I mean, you want to talk about extraordinary. We're talking about a woman who was literally on the brink of death, knocking on heaven's door. And she's no spring chicken, but now she's got her health back. She's thriving. She is that spring chicken once again, still well into her golden years. Just incredible. Check out that interview. And the cool thing also about Meg is that she loves helping others make these transformations for themselves now. And that's why she's co-founded this meal delivery service, plant-based meal delivery service, Mama Says. And if you feel like you've raised your health IQ by a point or two today, you've become inspired, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the Physicians Committee's YouTube channel. And don't forget to head over to Apple Podcast or Spotify. Look for the Exam Room Podcast. Click that subscribe button there and leave a 5-star rating. And for today, that, my friends, is going to wrap things up. Until next time, keep it plant-based.